Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Now, if you've been following my content for a while or you listen to my podcast, Broker by Concept, you've probably heard me throw around the term get into the details or never underestimate the significance of the details. And a lot of people don't really understand what this means in practical terms. Like, what does this actually mean? What are the details? Why are details important? And this also kind of ties into the whole bigger picture stuff around why do we even review and why is reviewing important? This was a review I did this morning inside the Midland Academy, and I think it's a great example of the significance of the small details. I believe this was played around Diamond 2. This was a Diamond 2 Silas player. And I'm going to kind of go through a few macro details and then also micro details, okay? And these small details led to the Silas losing this game. So, first interesting little detail. This Silas was in a pretty good spot, farming well, doing an okay job. And then he saw the opposing Fizz roam bot. And I think, I think he actually came straight out of bot to pick up a wave or something like that. So he thought this was a great opportunity for him to stay mid, get some plays. Fair enough, not too bad. Fizz makes his way up from bot side here. He decides to greed for this last little bit of damage here on the tower to get the second plate. As a result, he ends up taking 2 tower hits. Because he took these 2 tower hits and he chose not to base here, which you'll see in a second, and he has no pots in his inventory, well, because he's versing a Fizz that actually has a decent amount of damage, has Ignite, he's now immediately under a lot of pressure. And so as a result, you'll see in a second, he ends up playing it well, avoiding this, anticipating the R and avoiding the R, so props to him, gets a nice little ward out. But over the course of the next minute and a half, he was losing a bunch of pressure and couldn't find a reset. And so even though he was theoretically in a good situation, or should have been in a good situation, it wasn't resulting in any pressure. Fizz kind of had priority. He didn't have first move into the river. And you'll see later on, if we fast forward this, because again, he felt kind of high threat, he felt threatened into the Fizz. Fizz was able to get Bryo and move into this bot play. Now, I'm not saying, even if he did have Prio, he would have been able to win this bot skirmish, but if he had Prio, he might have been able to prevent Fizz from moving to this play or had first move at minimum. Now, this was all the results of him taking these 2 tower hits here, greeting for the play. He could have easily not gone for this additional play or taken the tower shots and then just recalled and got like a Kindle gem, working towards his Everfrost. This one small detail, this one small thing ballooned into a much bigger problem later down the line. Now, some people may argue that I'm nitpicking here. Fair enough. Let's look at another example. Later on in the game here, Fizz roams bot, gets that kill, whatever. He comes back. This Fizz actually chooses not to recall. And he has this bit of prio here to help the team with the dragon. So he kind of hovers into bot side. His team gets a nice little pick onto the Jinx. And he ends up helping the team with the dragon. But he didn't need to help this long. There was no way the enemy were going to contest. The enemy AD carry were dead. The Ezreal and the Jarvan have this dragon. They're completely fine. And as a result, though, because he overstayed helping the dragon right till it was dead, Fizz was already on the wave before he got back to the lane. So if we take a look at this here, the Fizz is now basically eing the wave, basically one-shot the wave before he even got here. And, he probably should have used his Everfrost here and looked for a better quality trade. But regardless, Fizz got the wave in. Now, yet again, he is reacting to whatever the Fizz is doing. Now, if we actually freeze frame right now, he should have actually already been pinging that Fizz could roam bot side because Ezreal's really overextended. But he missed that ping window and he didn't really know where Fizz was. Fair enough. Right? But he's in a bad spot. Why is he in a bad spot? Because he overstayed for that dragon. Okay. Then he hovers topside thinking that Fizz was top. Then he sees Fizz here. At this point, his Nara is already really far behind. I think been solo killed multiple times. His Jarvan's not anywhere near her. He can't do jack shit on topside right now. The tower's gone. But it takes him too long to realize this. So he actually overcommits. He goes all the way up here, goes over the blast cone, and little do we know, look what's happening again mid. Fizz is already on the next mid wave. Fizz can move again. So Fizz gets the next mid wave, and what do we see? Fizz has prio, you'll see in a second, ends up moving bot side, and the Fizz, I believe, collapses, and I believe maybe gets a double kill. Let's see how many kills he gets. Yeah, he kills the Ezreal there, and look at that. This is all, if we actually go back, there's multiple little mistakes. The first mistake, overstaying on the dragon. Because if he was on mid-wave, this Fizz wouldn't be able to contest him. That Fizz hadn't recalled. Silas actually went back to base and actually completed his Everfrost. If he actually moved from the dragon, got back to mid-wave as the mid-wave crashed, Fizz wouldn't be able to freely either wave. And then Fizz wouldn't really have been able to get that prio. The second mistake, he could have actually turned back mid here, knowing that the top play was over. Nars behind, Jarvan's not there, they're rifting it, they don't win the 2v2 topside, plus not to mention Fizz can collapse from behind. So screw topside, Ezreal's the win condition anyway in this situation. Go back mid rather than all the way committing. Fizz wouldn't have been able to get prio on this wave either, right? So there's a lot of little things, and his pings here could have been better, kind of pinging Fizz, moving down the river. All of these little details led to Fizz getting another own bot side. Now, between those two things, Fizz has picked up 2 or 3 kills in a situation where he never had the right to pick up those kills. Right? These are small things leading to big consequences. And then not to mention, on the back end, he doesn't track where Lee Sin was. He tunnel visions, takes the 2v3, ends up trading 1-for-1 and dying as well. That's a different story. So my point here from a macro perspective is that small things can lead to big consequences. Then now you may ask, well, how do I identify in this my game? Great question. This is where the reverse engineering technique comes into play. So let's say you're looking in your review and you remember, oh yeah, why was Fizz able to get these roams off? This was a really negative experience in my games. Oh shit, that's annoying. So you go to the VOD, you maybe go to that moment where Fizz gets this kill on bot side. And you're like, okay, I'm going to now rewind 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be like, okay, well, what led to that moment? Why was Fizz able to get prio? Why was Fizz able to get to that fight before me? Was there anything that I could have done? How did I contribute to this situation? And then you can see, was it a reset problem? Was it a wave management problem? Did you mess up a trade? Were your pings not good? This is where you've got to be curious. You've got to be open-minded. And this is why you've got to be willing to take responsibility and get into the details. So that's, regarding the macro stuff. Then there's also the micro component, right? So in this game, there was another painful experience where his team lost a team fight on the dragon. Here in this situation, he looked at it and he didn't really understand how he could play it better, and that's fair enough. But ultimately, this is where curiosity again really pays dividends. So here in this play, he decides to kind of split topside, and he felt as though he could come into the fight late. As a result, though, his team kind of got pincered. Fizz had free access, and he's just too late to the play here. And especially since he's a pretty core member of the team, the fight was basically already over by the time he got to the play, in my opinion. Fizz got, complete access onto the Jarvan, whatever. Now, reviewing team fights and skirmishes like this is a little bit tricky, but if we're talking and nitpicking the small details, he shouldn't even have, in my opinion, went Shadow Flame as a second item this game. I think he should have sat on a stopwatch, because when you're versing Fizz specifically, especially versus a Fed Fizz, Stopwatch and Zhonya's is very, very, very good into Fizz, because what you can do is you can actually block the Fizz R and then press Stopwatch and then peel. Now, his job, he doesn't need more damage. I think his team has plenty of damage. I think what he needs is to be able to peel this Ezreal in fights. And so a small detail, if he had actually on this recall, instead, even before this, rather than working towards a Shadow Flame, even just simply sit on a Stopwatch, then in this fight, if we had had the thought process, had the reference point or bigger picture understanding of how to deal with a Fizz. Okay, I've got a Fed AD carry. If I prevent the Fizz from one-shotting the AD carry and getting in the fight and being a nuisance, we can probably win the fight. He could have got here earlier. He could have stood between Fizz and the rest of the team, blocked the Fizz R, stopwatched, and then maybe they can actually win the fight. This is a bit of a stretch for some people. Some people don't understand this. We'll make it a lot clearer later on in a team fight later in the game. So this was another team fight later into the game. In this situation, he still doesn't have a stopwatch, and his Ezreal is by far the strongest member. I believe his Ezreal's like 3 items, absolutely killing it. The enemy Jinx, just to give context, I believe was 0-6. Right? I think 0-6 or something like that with like 1 item, 1.5 items, about 25 minutes. In this fight, right, you can see it's a split fight. We've got Ezreal kind of down here, looking for front-to-back fights. And then, he's kind of sitting off to the side with the Jarvan. Jarvan, goes and dives on the backline. He decides here, instead of peeling the Fizz, to go onto the Jinx on the backline. Sure, he kills the Janna and the Jinx, who are already behind anyway. But his Ezreal dies. And I pose the question, I say, well, okay, let's imagine if we had a stopwatch, and let's imagine if we had the peeling mindset here, peeling for our fair day to carry. We could have actually here, maybe even taken Scion ult or something like that, moved down here, stood between the Ezreal and the Fizz, block the Fizzar, which actually goes onto the Ezreal here, stopwatch it, use Scion ult, whatever you need to do to peel that Ezreal and win the fight that way. Jarvan's going to kill this Jinx regardless. He's a full lethality Jarvan. And even if he does trades 1-for-1, it doesn't matter. As long as your Ezreal stays alive, you win the fight. Now, right now, you know, a lot of people struggle with breaking down team fights like this, and you know, albeit it is a very difficult skill. But what I'm saying is that these small little changes in your positioning, changes in your target selection, changes in your mindset and how you perceive your role inside of a composition, changes in the way you use your abilities inside of your R usage can have a massive, drastic effect on the outcome of your games. And now, look, I get it. You know, you may miss these things in your review, but if you don't have that curious mindset and you're not willing to take responsibility and see how you're contributing to game sets and take a step back and at least attempt to visualize alternatives, you're going to be plateaued. And really, that's the most scary thing. Sitting here and believing that every single decision you do is the optimal play just because you can't immediately see an alternative. That's a very slippery slope to go down, guys. So I really want to promote this curious problem-solving mindset. And this is exactly what it looks like, guys. Have a crack. And so the main point, just to summarize this video, small details are overpowered. This is what we talk about in the Broken by Concept podcast. Getting into the details is the name of the game. So a little bit of a juicy tidbit video. Hopefully you take one or two things away from this video. Otherwise, good luck with your solo queue, guys. Cheers.